Welcome to the Build to Scale podcast. I'm Reem Ben-Shar, your host, and today we have a special guest joining us, Cliff Simon, Chief Revenue Officer at Carabiner Group. Cliff, thank you so much for joining today. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Cliff, for joining. Where are you joining from?
I'm here in New Jersey, just north of Princeton, hour to New York, hour to Philly. More importantly, 35 minutes from Newark.
Nice. Do you get to travel a lot?
Perks and hazards of the job, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining today. It's a pleasure having you. I know you're, CRO at the Carabiner Group. Can you tell me a little bit more about your background and maybe your journey leading up to your role today?
Sure. I've spent most of my career on the go-to-market side of the house, mostly in sales. Had the chance to dabble in RevOps back before it was called RevOps, right? I think anytime you're at a small company, you always get things thrown at you. So had a lot of that, handoffs in between different departments, and yeah, I sort of worked my way down. I was at a 90,000 person company to start off with, Fortune 20, kept going smaller and smaller and smaller, looking for more responsibility, access to being able to be to have a strategic seat at the table, and found myself eventually over that path going from 90,000 to 30,000 to 3,000 to 300 to 35 to being employee number 3 at Carabiner.
Very cool. Yeah, and I feel like this is probably a common trend, right? Starting to work at a large company, a lot of people, and then realizing, maybe I'll have a little bit more strategic input and control and impact with a smaller company, and just kind of heading that way. Sounds a lot like my path as well, but it's good to know that you're employee number 3, especially that you guys just had a few big things happening this year.
Yeah. The transition and selling to SBI was really cool. It was a fun experience to be able to go through that after only being at the company for 3.5 years. I know a lot of people, that's the dream, and it's really cool to have said that we've done that.
Very cool. Nice. So tell me more about what you guys do at Carabiner Group. I'd love to understand a little bit more, what you do in terms of RevOps, who you serve, how you serve them. Can you give us a quick overview?
Sure. Without going into all the weeds, I'd say by and large, we service the office of the CRO, sometimes the CFO, but we're really there to help make sure that everyone's aligned from a data perspective. And the only way to get to that final output of having great data, something that you can plan around and build your company around, is to have the right mixture of people, process, technology, right, in order to facilitate the collection of that data and then using that data to drive insights. And then obviously all the behaviors. It's this spider web that continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but that's what we do by and large, right? Customer buying journey, go-to-market processes. How do you underpin that with technology to help maximize the return and the value of the asset?
Cool. So tell me more about what you're seeing in terms of big trends in your space, right? Could be related to marketing, sales, since you're the CRO. What are some really interesting changes you've seen happening this year in your side of the world?
It's funny. About this time last year, I did a podcast with Sales Intel. Manoj did a really fun series. I think it was called like B2B Pioneers. And my favorite part about it was that everyone that went on the show, they're like, hey, here's 100 pennies. Where are you investing your pennies in order to see growth and to hit your target in 2024? And the interesting thing was all the folks that I spent a lot of time with and that I've known to be successful have really pivoted away from like the traditional SEO, ad buying, the things that used to work. There's been this massive focus on in-person events. We're seeing a lot of dinners, a lot of roundtables, a lot of side events with the bigger conferences that are happening. And what that I think boils down to is a shift in buying behavior. Over the last 4 years, we've really noticed, and a lot of Carabiner was built on this concept of people in the B2B space wanting to buy in work the way they do at home. How do we drive this consumer mindset? Word of mouth, referral, making it really easy for them to get access to the right information, the right data, because they're going to go out and do it anyway. 6 Sense put out stuff over the summer, and it was 70% of the buying journey is already completed by the time a buyer is reaching out. And they're reaching out first, 82% of the time. Like, that's crazy. With all the emailing and sequencing and everything else that we do, the buyer is still raising my hand and saying, help me. I think your product could be a fit for a need that I have. And then can you respond to them in a timely fashion, right? Can you be human and show up the right way, not just send an SDR at them to qualify? But they're buying 84% of the time, or rather 82% of the time from the first person they talk to, because they've already done so much homework. There's already a bias there, right? They've gone to their network, they've gone to their Slack communities, they've gone to the people that they were successful with at other roles and said, hey, what are you using? Or so that's all happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, and this is something we've heard a lot this year, right? The playbook of cold emailing and SEO and paid advertising, is not as effective as they used to be. And especially since probably way after COVID, we're seeing a huge increase of in-person networking events and, companies flying their team to conferences. We're seeing that pick up again. And there's so much more importance around, these types of really business development initiatives and strategies. So you guys were able to kind of figure that out probably before a lot of other companies, if I'm not mistaken.
Felt that way. I think the success we had, the growth that we had over the last 3.5, 4 years speaks to that. And it's not just like the BD side of it, right? I think business development's important. You have to fill the top of the funnel, especially with the difficulty most companies have there today. But it's fostering the human connection, right? This is not a do it now, win now game. This is a career play. This is a long tail effort. Right? Most companies are not trying to build a brand that's going to be a flash in the pan, be hot for a year and a half and go away. Right? You want to build something that's sustainable, that creates true enterprise value that you can then execute on for either yourselves or for your investors or whoever it might be, right? And then be able to tell that success story. But this is a long tail. This is something that you'll see some returns in the near future, but a lot of this is trying to affect not the 3 to 5% of buyers that are in market today, but the buyers that are going to be in market in the next 1 to 2 to 3 quarters to make sure that they are coming to you, right? That you're on their radar.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for you to share this because there's obviously a lot of pressure on. I don't want to call it instant gratification, but really, I don't know what other words to use, right? Putting in effort to get sales and new clients as fast as possible. But what you're saying is putting in the work today and building those relationships in order to create that demand for later on, even though we don't see necessarily results today, they will happen in the future. And that's how you guys, from what I understand, have built your growth.
Yeah, I think the data supports it across the board, right? AEs tend to be the most successful when they stay in seat in years 2 and 3 and 4 because the buyers know them, they trust them, they've provided value continually over that time period, right? It doesn't make sense to actually hop around from job to job to job anymore, right? Gain an expertise, build an audience, deliver value, and eventually that should turn into commercial value as long as you've got good product market fit.
For sure. What advice would you have to maybe founders who are in earlier stage of building their company, right? There's obviously that pressure need to grow user base and client acquisition and all of that. So do you have any advice, tips, any type of knowledge you would want to share with them to help them just secure that growth? In terms of where they're at in their growth stage?
I think the most important thing is to have product market fit. You have to have a good product. You have to have something that people are going to need and use. I saw an awesome post on LinkedIn the other day. I can't remember who it was, but the guy's like, if you want to talk about good product market fit, I just canceled my family's Spotify subscription. And the guys took a screenshot and shared a screenshot of his daughter texting and like, what happened to my Spotify? I can't access my playlist. I can't pick my songs. Like, what's going on? Please, 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 please reinstate. You want that type of visceral reaction where if you were to take this away from the end users, they would be screaming up the chain to the CRO, CFO, give me that back. I can't do my job without it. So how do you find a way to become that sticky within an organization? That's 1. 2, actually solve the problem. Go out, meet people, talk to them, network. It's a ground game. And a lot of times in my history, we've joked about like sales being a contact sport. It's 100% a contact sport. The more people you talk to, the better, but it has to be real connections, right? And you don't always have to be selling, but you have to be able to propagate the knowledge of what it is that you do into the marketplace so that people can create these concentric circles of influence on your behalf. And that's where the network effect comes in. And you can do that with no money. It just takes time and effort and grift.
Yeah, and you're kind of reiterating something that's That's really what we've been hearing a lot lately, especially in the tech space, which is build a solid product and you'll be able to grow, right? As long as your clients are satisfied and you're making a real change or solving problems. It's almost like, I'm not saying marketing is not important, but it's not as crucial if the product is really, really solid. So in a way, from what I'm hearing, this is also your take, right?
I mean, the amount of companies we work with that have significant RevOps problems, but are at a very large revenue count is mind blowing. It's amazing how far you can get with really good product market fit, right? Your systems can be crap, your processes can be crap, and it's not going to be scalable. You might not be able to get from 300 to a billion, but you can get really, really far. Service your clients well and give them a product that solves their problems, and make sure they can vocalize the ways in which you are solving those problems for them, right? Because the best advocates are your happy customers out in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like this is the traditional old way of growing a business that's making a comeback.
What's old is new again, right?
Exactly. Yeah. What are your thoughts around the way maybe some companies believe they can grow by using, maybe AI tools, or try to systemize as much as possible and scale their marketing efforts in a way where maybe they don't have that human to human connection, or they're not really building a relationship, kind of the newer way of growing a business. What are your thoughts here? Do you feel like there are some good sides to it, or, we'll see maybe a complete change and everybody reverting back to the traditional ways of doing sales?
Ultimately, I think it depends on what your goals are. Are you trying to build some massive thing that's going to IPO? I don't know if that's what most people want nowadays. I think what's really interesting to many of the founders out there who have struggled over the last 10, 15, 20 years to build something, see it fail, or build something and maybe they did a strategic M&A, or they sold off, or they're still running a company and they only own this much now, right? Because it's so diluted. Maybe it's more interesting to just go create a really awesome niche product that my TAM is 4,000 people, right? And I service them so well that they never leave. And with AI, you can develop so much faster. You don't need an army of engineers. Salesforce just announced that they're not going to hire any more engineers next year. 0 engineers will be added in 2025. That's crazy, right? I think the article I was reading earlier said that's something in the neighborhood of a $700 million savings for them in headcount, in human capital expense, based off of the way they hired in past years.
Especially that it's a massive company, so that's incredible. But yeah, I mean, I was reading an article on Klarna the past few days. They're actively working on having as much AI integrated within the company and almost turning it into like 100% AI driven company. So I don't know what that means for employees, but they also haven't hired anybody in, I believe, a year.
That's the thing, right? If you can very clearly define operations and processes, it's very possible to take out some of that busy work and let people do the things that they're really good at, right? How else are you going to drive a significant increase in average revenue per employee? Less employees. And if all you're paying for is the compute cost, and you can get that like pennies on the dollar, that could be really interesting for a lot of companies.
For sure, for sure. What a time to live in. There's just been, I feel, so many changes lately that are just accelerating. So I'm sure this is relevant to you as someone who's in revenue ops.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of friends that are at some very interesting AI companies, and we keep hearing this term, autonomous revenue, right? How do you make it so that the salesperson never even has to log anything, right? We're on a call, my Gong recorder or whatever tool it is that I'm using to ingest that information, and my email and my calendar and all of that is getting fed into the machine, and the machine's spitting out probability to close. It's doing my forecasting. It's helping me figure out what personas I need to work with next. And then AI assistants on top of that I wake up in the morning, I toss in my headphones. Like, there's so much stuff that's really, really close, really close. So I don't know. It's exciting. It's terrifying. It's fun. I'm really curious to see how things turn out.
Yeah, absolutely. In your perspective, what are some challenges you feel have been more prominent this year, either from your end as a CRO or just from your space in general? What are some big challenges you feel companies have faced this year?
I mean, along the AI lines, how do you put together AI governance. I think that one's going to be pushing a lot of people's buttons in 25. Right? And it's something a lot of folks are already talking about right now. If you've got on average, let's call it 75 SaaS tools, and I think that's probably low. Each one of them is instilling some type of AI into their product. And if they're not, they're dying. So how do you make sure that all of that is playing with the same rules, it has access to the right data? As far as I know, there isn't a single tool that does that today. I know a couple that are trying to get there really quickly. Think of like Box. But how do you drive AI governance across a myriad of tools? That's going to be a significant challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah. Are you guys using AI to a certain degree internally? Do you have initiatives maybe that you're planning to work towards just to, I don't know, augment a solution or provide better support for clients? Do you guys have any big plans when it comes to that?
There's a couple different things that we're doing within my particular line of business. A lot of it around looking at benchmarking and data for our customers when we are doing things like data enrichment or helping them understand where they stand against the typical peer. I think it's the ingestion of that data and the processing of a lot of it that AI is helping us with. But outside of that, a lot of what we do is humans actually showing up and doing the work, right? So a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe for next year, what are the big priorities for the Carabiner Group?
I am trying to make sure that we are growing efficiently and profitably, right? Other big bets for next year, we're going to be doubling down on in-person again. You and I talked earlier when we were prepping, we're going to be standing up a podcast. So we want to get out there and make sure that we're doing more content, not just for the sake of doing content, but to make sure that we're actually helping to educate and lend value to the community. So yeah, that's sort of where we're at right now. We've been hiring like crazy, so that's always fun and terrifying. So got to keep that train going too.
Yeah, I feel like fun and terrifying is your tagline, kind of the second time you're saying this. It's very relevant for all the different topics we discussed, but it's nice. It's exciting.
Yeah, well, you've got expectations and you want to meet those expectations, right? But when we were growing the business, I probably broke it like 4 or 5 times because we couldn't keep up. It was so hard to keep up with hiring to all the work that we were bringing in the door. Mind you, great problem to have, not complaining at all. But it was a significant challenge for us because our time to close a deal on average was half the time it took us to hire a person to work that client once we brought it on board. So we had to have a very good pipeline of talent and make sure that we were always keeping that stocked ahead of time.
Yeah, and it's definitely a common challenge when it comes to hiring. We talk to a lot of different founders and business owners that are kind of sharing the same thing. Finding the right talent is always takes a little bit of time, and you don't want to make the wrong move and hire the wrong type of person because that can cause some significant damage to that can impact growth. But yeah, I mean this is good. You guys are growing and it's exciting and it's good to see.
Yeah. Could be far worse, right? I know a lot of our peers are in a different situation, so very thankful for where we are.
So if you had any kind of last words of advice for any founder in the tech space who's looking to grow, what would you tell them?
Don't focus on, the product's important, right? Don't just focus on the product, focus on the problem that you solve and speak humanly about it. Like, I know a lot of founders get super excited about the product they built. This is the best product ever, but that doesn't always resonate with the buyer, right? How are you going to solve their problem? What does this mean for them? And focus on them. Be extremely focused on the customer and treat them like a person, like they're humans. I think if you do that, you'll have a good shot.
That's good advice. And, it's kind of a good reminder of what really matters when it comes to creating more growth. So yeah, that's a great reminder. Awesome. So if any of our listeners want to know more about the Carabiner Group or even connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. And yeah, happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cliff, for your time today. It was a pleasure connecting with you and having you on the podcast. Yeah, hope we stay in touch and stay connected.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Thanks, you too.